Hello and welcome to another episode of Metal Effort. My name's Nehemiah, and today I've got the Benchmade Bugout to review. This is on loan from Nick Shabazz. Thank you, Nick, as always. And just a quick shout out to Nick. Like a third of my knives, something maybe more than that, are loaned by Nick Shabazz. So just a heartfelt thank you, Nick. Let's get into our size comparison. We've got our Spyderco PM2. And we've got our Parrot 3. Oh, hey, you guys. Hey, no fighting. No fighting. This is a really, really, really interesting size. Very similar to the size overall, like lengthwise. A little bit shorter than the Parrot 3, but not by much. Blade length, it's about a 3.25-inch blade length with a 3-inch cutting edge. Really, really, really well kind of portioned out dimensions on this knife. Let's get some other kind of scales in here. This is a budget option, the Civivi McKenna. I kind of want to pop this into some cameos. I really like this knife, and I think it deserves a little bit more screen time. This is also the Benchmade Bugout is my second Benchmade knife in the last couple weeks, which is crazy. I didn't have a single review of a Benchmade 2 weeks ago. Now I've got two, so that's cool. And last but not least, just because I'm still in the honeymoon phase with this beautiful lady, the Herman Sting, which is a very similarly shaped knife. Not shaped, but sized, I should say. Only blinged out. If this is a Honda Civic, this is like a Bugatti Veyron. Nah, that's overstating it a bit. It's I don't know, like a tricked out Lexus maybe. Type in the comments what if this is a Honda Civic. What car is the Herman Sting? Something like less known but very good. Maybe like a new Jaguar. Nobody's giving like Jaguar any credit these days. They still make good cars. Oops, nope. Sorry, Benchmade. Apologize, little buddy. This is about you. So let's get into some other objective kind of weigh-ins here. It could be one of them. The bug out, the term bug out is like you got a bug out bag, stick it in your bag, and like if poop hits the fan, you grab your bag and you bug out. So this is meant to be ultra lightweight. If you put a bunch of stuff in your bag, you need to be really efficient with, weight and size and all that stuff. And this would be like the ideal EDC bug out companion that you could always have in your rucksack just ready to go. Clocking in at 1.85 or 0.9. Very, very lightweight. For reference, this little tiny knife, the McKenna, is just a shade under that, and it's significantly smaller in profile. They almost weigh the same, which is crazy given the size of the knives. So that's some perspective on size and weight for the Benchmade Bugout. With that stuff out of the way, let's jump into the dent, the decent, the excellent, the nitpicks, and the terrible of this piece of metal. First off, in the decent, the steel type. So this is S30V. Prices on this knife around 110-ish. So for that price point, S30V is, I think, really, really kind of the go-to steel in that category, where it's definitely a super steel. It's kind of in the middle of the pack of, powdered metallurgy, and it's just really proven itself. S35VN was meant to be like the successor to S30, but, they ended up being a lot closer than we all predicted. And, the heat treat, I think, is just easier to pull off on the S30V, and it's just been a mainstay of both Benchmade and Spyderco. So I think it definitely has kind of shown its validity in just the sheer amount of time and experience that people have had with it. So S30V is a great steal on this knife, and I think it's a good value at this price. The clip on this is also really nice. So I'm starting to like the deep carry pocket clips that Benchmade is kind of going with. The normal, like if you get a 940, it doesn't come with a deep carry pocket clip. Normally you would have to like email them to mail you one, but both these models just come with a deep carry pocket clip out of the box, which is awesome. Different shape, you know. This is like a little half clip type thing. The knife is light enough that I don't think that is too much of a negative thing. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to jump out of your pocket in most cases, and there's still enough, you know, spring to it that I think you're okay. If you make the clip longer, you're just adding the extra weight, and that kind of goes against the whole idea of the knife is to keep that weight down. So the clip ultimately is fine. It's deep carry, tucks the knife away. It's kind of off to the side a little bit, which I actually kind of like, and it does a good job. I like the lanyard loop on this knife as well. It's kind of cool because you can have it go through just both sides if you want. And it's, you know, in the back of the knife where it's not competing with the clip. But if you want to loop it through one of the two, you could do that as well. So it gives you a little bit of flexibility. Some people complain about like the sharpness of it. I don't know. I feel like it's not that big of a deal. If you really want to, you can just cut that stuff off, I suppose, if you want to trim down. You know, get a Dremel tool or something and just knock that off if you know you're never going to use the lanyard part. If I was going to have a bug out permanently, I don't know if I would want to do that. I'm not a lanyard person, but I don't know, it seems like a lot of work with not a lot of payoff. I'm perfectly happy with how it's kind of designed here. Next decent point is the ergonomics, and you know, the ergos are pretty solid. It's a well-designed blade handle shape where I think, you know, big hands are still going to be able to grab onto it pretty good. It does feel like you don't have a ton of room to really, you know, big sausage fingers or something on this, but it's not cramped by any means, and I think vast majority of people are going to have a hand that's going to fit this guy pretty well. Having said that, it's not like super contoured. It's not like, you know, a hammock for your hand. It's functional. There's not too much in the hot spot. You know, you got, with all axis locks, there's just a lot of texture kind of up in this area on both sides. So it's never going to be like a soft, you know, comfortable feel. But that's not really what it's meant for. It's meant to be grippy. It's meant to be, you know, ready to just grab and go. So I think it's perfectly adequate for what it's trying to do. Last decent thing is just the fit and finish. And, you know, on this particular sample that Nick loaned me is pretty darn good. It's pretty much centered. The action is dialed in. I don't know how much of this is, you know, Nick's fine tuning and breaking it in, or if he just hasn't had a chance to use it. You know, maybe I'll update you if I talk to him about it. I'll pin that comment in the video, but it's good. I have no reason to think that this action wouldn't be pretty awesome or pretty easy to get to be awesome, considering how good this one has been. So you might have to get in there and clean it and lube it up and stuff. It might not be as smooth or as well fit together out of the box. You might have to fidget with it a little bit, fiddle with it, I suppose, to maybe get the centering right, get the screw down at the right tension so you have good action but no blade play. Everything came to me pretty much well tuned, so take that for what it's worth. Speaking of the fit and finish, let's get into the excellent and talk about the OCD, the open, the close, and the disengage. The options you've got for opening are thus. You have 2 thumb studs, so you can do like a Sebenza rollout. You can flick it up. There's enough detent where that's perfectly adequate. You can also do a Spidey flick, grabbing that thumb stud on the opposite side, and it deploys pretty well. It's not as natural of a Spidey flick as one that's got, you know, an actual spider hole, but it's perfectly possible, and I don't feel like it's awkward or weird. This is still my preferred deployment method, is doing it with the Spidey flick. So this is good. I mean, it's somewhere in between decent and excellent for the opening specifically. It's not quite as buttery smooth and fidgety on the open as the mini Griptilian, specifically the one with the Spidey hole, but it's almost excellent. The reason OCD as a whole gets into the excellent is because the disengage and the close are pretty darn good. So for the disengage, you've got the axis lock, and it's pretty much drop shut. It's exactly like a well-tuned axis lock should be, or a compression lock. similar to, you know, our PM2 here. I drop that compression lock and it just closes right up, right? So that's kind of the leading de facto locking mechanisms from two big companies, where you get solid lockup, quick deployment, easy close, easy disengage, free fall if you want it. So this is basically, you know, super fidget. Don't put it in the freezer. Very easy to fidget with, and it's quick and easy to deploy. I mean, really, you can use the disengage to open the knife if you want. You could just pull that back and kind of whip the blade out if you want. So that's kind of a third way to open the knife, I suppose. And all that for the disengage, the close, it's all excellent. So total, it's in the excellent section when you package the three together. Next excellent point I'd like to talk about is the blade shape. And this is I think the advantage that the Bugout has, aside from some other things we're about to talk about, that really sets it apart from like the 940 or even the mini Griptilian. When you compare the blade shape to this, it's a much thinner grind. This is about 0.9 inches thick. So you're starting with a very thinly ground, you know, piece of metal. The grind height is much higher. This is about 1 inch total. Not the grind line, but the actual height of the blade. But the grind is definitely better than, you know, like a Scandi grind almost on the Griptilian. So behind the edge, it's going to be a lot better. This is a much more slicey blade on the Benchmade compared to the Griptilian or the 940. The 940, I never got around to reviewing on my channel. I did own it kind of before I started the channel. It's in like my very first video briefly, but the main reason I got rid of that knife, it was kind of a much thicker blade and a much shorter grind line, and it wasn't the best slicer. And I do enough slicing in my EDC life that's kind of a not a deal breaker, but a deal stretcher, a deal flexor, and ultimately I got rid of it. This kind of fixes that problem, to where the blade shape is just really practical and effective. I like the top swedge on the top. It makes the piercing cuts even better. It's just the right length where you can get through, you know, apples and stuff like that, but not so big and cumbersome that people are going to be scared if you whip it out. So blade shape and cutting power is excellent. Next point is kind of the point of the knife, which is just how slim and how slim and light this knife is. So, you know, coming in at under 2 ounces and just barely being heavier than some little tiny knife like the McKenna is just really a feat to be held. And it's totally understandable why everybody's going so crazy over this knife, because if you can have such a effective tool in your pocket and just not really even feel that it's there, not worrying about, you know, your keys or whatever else is in your pocket banging up like a titanium body, you know, this is FRN. It's just like, whatever. It's just kind of a beater knife that's just going to be a reliable tool for you and be lightweight at the same time. You don't really have anything coming off of it too bad in the pocket. There's a little bit of a concern I'll talk about in the nitpicks, but overall the carryability of this knife is off the charts. I think, you know, if you're talking about all-time great, like, effective tool divided by weight, this is going to be toward the top of that list of all knives. So EDC knives, I'll say, that qualifier, but ultimately it lives up to the Bugout name. Last excellent thing is the value, the price. And as a stock version of this knife, you know, you're talking $100, $110, where, you know, check your favorite retailer, whatever. Let's go with $110. That, I think, is a really good price. I don't think it's like, it's not astoundingly like under budget to the point where I'm like singing from the praises because it's so financially beneficial to you. I think it's an excellent product at an excellent price, and so I'm putting it in the excellent. But, you know, it, like the McKenna is $80, and, you know, the steel type is a little bit worse, but, you know, the finish is a little bit nicer on this. The action's a little bit better, but they're still comparable, you know. And this is from a budget brand. So Vivi is like, you know, the sub brand of Wee knives. That's like their whole thing, is to be a budget knife. And so this is like not officially a budget knife. It's right above, you know, if you're going to put an arbitrary line of anything under $100. I guess it's just outside of that, but I think we should include it in the budget category. Maybe it's just the king of budget. It's the most expensive budget, but deservedly so, and I think it's a good price. All right, let's get into nitpicks. I only got a couple things to talk about here. First one is, and listen carefully for this nitpick because I want to be consistent with what I'm saying here. Now, some people, this is not me, but some people complain about the broken line right here. Got a little gap. It's kind of like a Shirogorov kind of has this deal going on where, most knife designs try to connect the shoulder of the scale to the end of the blade so that when it's closed, you have one solid line right here and there's no break. The Bugout just kind of ignores that design philosophy altogether, and there's a break in it. So, there's some potential for issues here. I was a little bit worried that this would be sharp, but if you get close, let's see there, you can see they've knocked it down a little bit. It slopes ever so slightly, and it's not sharp or pokey anywhere there. So I think as far as like injuring yourself or scraping yourself or nipping yourself with this, I don't think that's too much of an issue. However, the reason this is in the nitpicks is putting it into my pocket. I had like a little fray like loop for my pants. I put so many things in my pocket. It's just my pants are pant pockets are breaking down. But this kind of a little strand that had looped on both sides of my pants still got kind of stuck in there, so I was like, I can't get it in my pocket, and it's just like one thing to snag on. Not like the biggest of deals, but there is some kind of practical cost, however rare it is, of just having a gaping shelf kind of right there. It doesn't bother me because I want them to design the knife, for it being open and used more than being closed and looking good. So, I'm willing to take that, infrequent nitpick on the whole, but I'll still mention it. Last nitpick, and this isn't, I'm not holding this against the knife too bad, but the steel that's on the inside here, it only goes to about here, and then the rest is FRN, and you have just 2 barrel spacers kind of at the back. This is not really like the most hard use knife. Like you can bend and flex the knife, it's got some give to it. I think it's not as bad as you would imagine it being, but it's still like a thing. If you're watching this, if you're this deep into YouTube, hello, welcome, you probably know what the limitations of most pocket knives are, and you shouldn't be, prying stuff like that anyway. But of the times where you maybe have to, or you're doing something that's in between prying and cutting, you probably don't want to choose this knife for it. You should know that going in though, and I don't really want to hold it against the knife, but it is not as durable as something that has a steel liner going all the way, underneath. This is going to be a lot more durable for that, kind of on the fringe hard use type stuff that you might have to do use a pocket knife for. So keep that in mind in your purchasing decisions. Last nitpick, and this one, this is a very feeble nitpick as well, and I'm just kind of parroting what a lot of people have said on the internet. Like, I think anecdotally, this is totally just speculation across the board, but Benchmade's had some problems with QC in the past. I think they're on an upward trajectory of kind of figuring that stuff out and getting better. This particular model, again, I could have been cherry picked for Nick, I'm not sure, but the grind is not bad, and the fit and finish was in the positive. So overall, this is a good specimen. So I'm not judging it based on this particular knife, but there's a small possibility you get a lemon. A couple posts on Knife Swap of people selling or trading the Bugout and be like, hey, it's a little off center, hey, it's a little off center, hey, it's a little off center, and people still snap them up pretty quickly. So being off center is not the end of the world, but if you're really a stickler on that, you're gonna kind of have to win the Bugout lottery to get one that isn't off center a little. And that's totally subjective, and maybe there's some kind of selection effects. Maybe only the off center ones are the ones that people want to sell. So take this with a grain of salt. In the terrible section, I don't have anything to talk about, so let's get right into the conclusion. And for the conclusion, I want to share with you just kind of a metaphor. I was about to buy a Bugout not too long ago, and I got really deep down the rabbit hole of modifications, and a lot of the retailers, Blade HQ, GP Knives, they've partnered with people that make custom scales for the bug out, and they'll just package those custom scales with a bug out, and you can buy them both at the same time. So some CF with some cool milling on it, and you buy the whole package for, let's say, 200, 250, whatever it might be. And there's just a whole menagerie of mods that you can get for the bug out. The bug out is incredibly popular, and there's a lot of third-party opportunists that are kind of cashing in on just the sheer number of people that have bug outs and love them and want to maybe upgrade them and make them look more unique. And so I was kind of getting excited about that. There's something about pimping out a knife that's just kind of fun. I understand the opposite end of that spectrum of if you feel like you need to mod your knife, maybe it's not the knife you need. That's an argument. But I think the only thing I want to share with you is just, ultimately, I haven't purchased a bug out yet because I kind of had to check myself. I think the reason this is such an amazing knife is because it's such a good value proposition, and the cutting power, the just exceptional tool that it is combined with price and weight to kind of make it something special. So the metaphor here would be like a Honda Civic. You have a Honda Civic that is reliable and has good gas mileage and has a decent price, let's say. Those are kind of the three things that most stick out when you think of a good, Honda Civic. I want a reliable car, good gas mileage for a decent price. Well, then, people love what that is bringing to the table so much that they want to put $5,000 rims on their Honda Civic, or they want to soup it up and put a spoiler on and get a souped up engine or whatever it may be. You're taking something that why you like it in the first place is because it's efficient and it doesn't cost a lot and it's just a good all-around value proposition. If you start adding in all these things that aren't really adding the value necessarily, it's a personal subjective value. I'm not saying it's worthless, but and I like, the carbon fiber scales that I was seeing online. But as soon as I start cobbling together this high-end knife, then what's special about the bug out isn't special anymore. I'm taking away potentially the weight. Carbon fiber, is a good option. It's similarly weighted to FRN, but there's a lot of brass handles on a bug out. It might look cool, but when you really deeply think about it, that's kind of the exact opposite of kind of scales you should be putting on the bug out. That doesn't make any sense to me. So, if you're trying to make it a rigid scale, then maybe you should buy a more heavy-duty knife. If you want a super-duper fast car, buy a sports car. Don't take, a value-efficient car and then just tack on a bunch of stuff to it to make it the car you should have bought in the first place. And so this kind of idea, of this mental dialogue going in my head, I ended up talking myself out of buying one of these souped up bug outs. And so then I'm kind of questioning the whole thing. I think after handling it, all this, that's going on in my mind at this time, I hadn't actually gotten to handle a bug out. And so, that now I have the clarity, having handled one, having used one, having reviewed one, I can say it's worth getting a bug out. You should get a bug out. I'm going to leave it up to you if you want to trick it out. Obviously, it's all in the eye of the beholder, what looks good and what you think is value proposition. But I think it's maybe a good thing to at least think about and consider. Should you use that money to just buy the knife you actually want instead of tricking out the bug out, or just buy the bug out for what it is and enjoy it for what it is good about that knife, which is how light it is and the price. Enjoy those two things. You don't need to change them. That's just my opinion. Feel free to disagree in the comments below. It's a happy place, happy conversation, even if you do disagree. And we'll continue this conversation in the comments. I hope this was helpful to you, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.